I don't understand how you can go from the mindset of winning at Eden Park like that under such pressure and then playing such, willy-nilly frilly bollocks the next week.
What are the consequences? I'm a big believer in righting your wrongs, learning from them and being given second chances. But first off, there needs to be a penalty for those mistakes.
That's what I felt was really embarrassing as a New Zealander watching from overseas, was the capitulation.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lachlan Waugh, typically behind the scenes, pulling the strings, pushing some buttons, pulling levers up and down, making sure that the production of this product is half decent. Martin Devlin is usually the host. He's away at the moment, so I'm sort of filling in, doing a little bit of hosting here and there. We will hear from Marty in a sec. He will dial in from Italy. Yes, Italy, that's where he is. Lucky bastard. He's got a couple of thoughts on that All Blacks defeat against the Springboks. The record-breaking defeat, man. So we will catch up with Marty in a sec. I do have a couple of things I want to say myself. A few thoughts, if you will, 3 to be exact, that are gnawing away at my brain. First off, and probably most importantly from an objective perspective, that Springbok performance against the All Blacks in Wellington on the weekend was absolutely sublime. They were just sensational to watch, playing some of the best rugby I've ever seen from our great rival. I think us All Blacks fans, for the most part, are good at admitting when we're beaten by a better side on the day. And we were, and I'm happy to admit that. But what I'm not happy to accept is the performance from our men in black, particularly that last 20 minutes. From the outside looking in, it felt like we gave up. It's an almighty record-breaking margin of defeat, and it leaves me wondering what the repercussions will be. That's my first question. What are the consequences? I made a point a couple of weeks ago on a segment with Marty saying that there isn't enough consequence for poor performances. I'm a big believer in righting your wrongs, learning from them and being given second chances. But first off, there needs to be a penalty for those mistakes. It sounds a bit harsh, but it's like committing a crime. I'm all good with someone turning their life around after some bad mistakes. In fact, I love that stuff. I think we all do. We all love a comeback story, right? But you do need to pay a price. That's sort of the first thing you got to do before that road to redemption, right? That's how we learn. That's how we grow. Now, the All Blacks losing is nowhere near as serious as breaking the law. I know. Please don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. But if we can isolate and separate sport for a sec, that defeat is a performance well below the expected output of this coaching group and their players. It is a failure. The second thing that's stuck in my mind, and it does link a bit to that last point, is do we have the coaches in place to get the job done? I have no issue with Scott Robertson having the job, and I'm not calling for his head. But based on his performances as coach, is he A, good enough, and B, the best option available? My answer to those two initially are, I think so, and to be honest, probably not. Isn't the best coach available for an international job someone who has the most experience and success across a variety of rugby comps, such as international rugby, club rugby up north, super rugby down here, etc., etc.? If we're being honest, the best candidates for the job are probably Warren Gatland, John Mitchell, Jamie Joseph, Joe Schmidt. Heck, you could argue Eddie Jones. Now, not all those coaches are necessarily available, but Razor's resume doesn't quite stack up with theirs. And given we're all quick to criticise Super Rugby and we yearn for the days the South Africans were involved, then what the likes of Gatland and Joseph have achieved at international level, well, that probably outweighs Super Rugby's success, right? Again, this is just a question, it's my curiosity. My final thought is actually a comment on a DSPN Facebook post that I saw yesterday, which I'll pop up on the screen right here. How many All Blacks players, if asked, would play the next test for no match payment, i.e. for the love of the game? Now, this is obviously a totally hypothetical scenario, it wouldn't happen, but it's a good point. How many of these players want to go out there and right their wrongs, flip the bird to the doubters, and restore pride in the jersey for the love of the jersey? I do genuinely believe some would. Look, I love this team so much, and as a fan, I want to go out there and prove the world that we're still rugby's gargantuan force. So I can only imagine that if I feel that way, then surely the players do too. Maybe, though, I am being, as Martin would put it, a bit too glass half full.
I'm just getting word that we've managed to track him down.
we have managed to steal a bit of his time. Marty, how are you?
Yeah, and thank you everyone for all the comments and the continued support of the channel. I really do appreciate that. Appreciate the work that you're doing, Lachlan. I am on holiday. I've read a few comments about it. Picked a terrible time to go away. Look, we're over here on the other side of the world seeing my youngest son. So something's more important than sport. Family's one of those. And any chance you get to meet up with your children overseas, obviously if you have children, you'll understand this. But having said that, we all went down to a grubby little bar in Rome called the Highlander on Saturday morning, Italy time, and we watched the All Blacks get a toweling, a shellacking at that bar. Probably about, I don't know, there's only about 20 people there at that time, about 5 Kiwis and the rest were South Africans. They absolutely had a great time. So it was an enjoyable experience, I can tell you that, watching our national team just get completely buttered like they did on that day. I felt pretty embarrassed, to be honest, as a New Zealander. One of the great things that you can do in terms of sport is actually watching the All Blacks play overseas. It's a source of enormous pride. As soon as you see the haka, you hear the national anthem and you see the men in black run out, it just makes you really feel like you know where you're from. It's one of those really centering experiences. And I've, like you have, Locke, we've watched the All Blacks play in stadiums overseas. We're going to a pub and watching them play. It's a hell of an experience, but not when they turn out such a limp-assed effort like that. And I hate to be critical, but it felt embarrassing from where I was watching, and it felt like we gave up. And I've never seen an All Black side give up before. And then, obviously statistically, when we lose like that with a record point score against us, it's very damning. What I don't want to do right now, though, is go into the details and the intricacies of that game. I feel that, Tony Johnson has done some amazing work for us. And that chat he had yesterday was brilliant. And so, if you want to actually watch that and see, get the game broken down, there's probably no better person than James Parsons to explain what was going on as far as the scrums we did, everything like that. I guess what we'll talk about here more is just the emotion of it and the perspective to put on it now and where the team goes from here.
Yeah, have you ever seen a performance? I'm the same as you. I felt like we gave up in that last 20 minutes, from the outside looking in at least, but the way that the floodgates just opened, because we were only down by 7 in the 61st, 62nd minute or something. But have you ever seen an All Black performance quite like that?
No. Look, and, you go back through the years and you rack your brain and you think, okay, what are the towelings that we've had? And, there have been some awful, well, when I say awful, there've been some very average All Black sides over the years, where we've gone through 2, 3, 4 or 5 years and lost games. And but, that last 20 minutes was dreadful. There's no other way of describing it. We were in the game. At halftime, we had a lead. Remember, we were 10-7 up and conceded, 36 points, whatever it was, without reply. There was a period there, I think, 17-10, where we got a penalty and we were all screaming at the TV saying, kick the 3, 20 minutes to go, get the ball back, go back down there in. But we were incompetent on the weekend. We weren't able to win the line out. Our scrum was going backwards. And as you say, I think most of us feel like the team gave up at the end. And when I hear comments afterwards by, people like Mills Maloney and Kieran Reid, who are Centurions in the All Black jersey, and they felt that was what they were watching. Well, who am I to say it? But those guys have every right to say that. And if that's what they were saying, well, that's pretty unhealthy. I don't care who the players are wearing that black jersey, but you don't give up. And that's what I felt was really embarrassing as a New Zealander watching from overseas, was the capitulation more than anything. Listen, we'll take a loss. And, it's probably way too late already in this chat for me to say what I should have said right at the start, which was, congratulations to the Springboks and fair play to them. I mean, they were absolutely magnificent. Don't get me wrong, Locke. We were at Eden Park the week before, and I thought we deserved to win that game. And I thought that we played well enough in that game to say we deserved to win that game. And also a couple of weeks ago, we were talking, and I think you asked me, or I might have just said it, that, look, I would split the series 1-1 if we won at Eden Park. Well, I've got to cop that now. I'm not happy to split the series losing like we did.
No.
If we'd lost to South Africa in Wellington and we'd fought hard to the end of the game and they were a better team on the day, again, fair play to them. But, that was, look, I don't even know, where to go to try and explain what was going on in the All Blacks. And I haven't, watched a lot of post-match press on it, but it was just woeful. There was just a skill level, decision making, a lack of willing to put bodies on the line, gaps, guys running through us. As I said, it was humiliating to watch it. It really was. And a pub where you're outnumbered 3-1 by the South Africans. They were whooping and hollering, and I hung my head at the end of it. I was honest enough, and I said, I've never seen anything like that, really, from our team.
No,
ever.
Yeah, and they travel well, the Saffers. We noticed that when we were in France at the World Cup. They travel very well.
In numbers, they turned up in numbers.
Yeah. So you've been around watching the sport a lot longer than me, watching this team a lot longer than me. What was it like, for example, what was it like in the 90s? Because I know towards the end of the 90s, I think John Hart, correct me if I'm wrong, was the coach, and he was copying it quite a bit with certain defeats, and just the knives were out for him. And obviously we endured a similar thing with Ian Foster a couple of years ago. Just from an outside perspective as a broadcaster and as a fan, how far off do you think Razor is? I'm not saying I want Razor to be in that position. I don't think you do either. We like Razor. We think he's a good coach.
No, I don't.
But I feel like the Wolves are going to be coming soon.
Well, I think that for both our coach and our players, I think reality has really struck home now that there's a big difference between being good at Super Rugby and being good at international rugby. And there was a moment in that first half where Damien McKenzie did this pathetic little chip kick across. You remember this? We were 3-on-1 in the back line, 3-on-2 in the back line. He was playing like backyard rugby, and I just couldn't believe it at the time. I thought, what are you doing, and what are you thinking? This is a test match. Surely you have enough experience by now. And I'm not just picking on that guy, but I'll just highlight that as one example. Surely you have enough experience now that that's just absolute BS playing like that. It really is. I mean, you don't do that playing in a test match. You're playing the back-to-back world champions, and, you're acting like you're playing a game of touch on the beach. And, that's what's really frustrating. It's like these guys are better than that. They've had way too many test matches under their belt to be pulling moves like that. And so this is what I just don't get. What is the instruction going into these games? What are they being told? What are they being told? That just go out there and express yourself? Because if that's just rubbish, if that's the case, test match rugby is about percentages. It's about error-free rugby. It's about taking your opportunities. And it's not about showmanship. And it's not about being a hero. And it's not about thinking that, you're going to be a glory boy. And again, I'm not picking on him specifically, but that was a moment where, to me, that encapsulated our whole performance. It was like, for God's sake, really? You honestly believe that playing like that is going to win you a test match against the Springboks? You're out of your mind, mate.
Yeah.
You are better than that, and we deserve to see you playing better than that. And it's okay to harshly criticize in these. It doesn't mean the players are ratchet. It doesn't mean that I want them all sacked from the team. It doesn't mean that. But, if you turn up to work and put a performance in like that, your boss, everyone that depends on you, has got every right to turn around and say, that's just rubbish, mate. And you're not going to take 2 weeks off sick leave and get a support puppy. You're going to cop the criticism on the chin like you should, like a man, and you're going to realize that that's not acceptable. And if you want to play for the All Blacks, well, then you have to actually change your mindset, because that kind of giggle fest rugby isn't appropriate at that level. The World Cup by playing like that. And that's what frustrates me. These guys are better than that. Are much better than that. And they proved that the week before at Eden Park. That's the thing, Lachlan. Like, as I said, we deserve to win that game. And so I don't understand how you can go from the mindset of winning at Eden Park like that under such pressure and then playing such, willy-nilly, frilly bollocks the next week.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Is the coach telling them to play like that? Are they doing that themselves? Maybe
it's like it's a perfect storm, because when you think of the All Blacks too, like there was that it's sort of a rough step, but it's the fact that from the opening game of the World Cup in 2011, for example, right through till September 2014, which is 3 and a bit years, we lost one test. And then the All Blacks teams, the great ones of the past, and you know this as well as I do, or better than me actually, that they would win games, and they might be ugly or they might be great, but they'd still keep winning and they'd maintain that standard. And this All Black team, like a good win against Argentina, and then got outplayed, totally outmuscled, and then a really good response against South Africa, but then they can't maintain that standard, and which I guess is probably just both a lack of talent and experience, but also maybe just the coaching isn't good enough. But at the same time, like Damian McKenzie making that play, Beauden Barrett did a similar thing in the second half. Will Jordan throwing it to the feet of Leroy Carter when we had essentially a 3-on-1. Like that's not down to the coaches, that's the players, isn't it?
No, that's right. That is, and it's, as I keep saying, these guys are much better than that.
Yeah.
And I hope that they are their own harshest critics, because it doesn't matter what I say, and it doesn't matter what you say, and it doesn't matter what anyone who's watching this podcast says. What really matters is how they respond. And we're all going to look for a hell of a response when it comes to playing Australia, not just in the first Bledisloe test, but in both Bledisloe tests. I feel, though, psychologically, this is a massive setback for us. Look, I've been a Manchester United fan for 50 years, the same as I've, followed the All Blacks. I started following United in 75. My first game that I ever saw the All Blacks play was their water polo test in Scotland in 1975. And I think there's a parallel here which deserves explanation. Man United had a fantastic period under Sir Alex Ferguson, as everyone knows. I mean, I don't need to repeat this, but the last 13 years have been really substandard. And on the weekend, we got dicked by Manchester City. It's just an awful performance. And the coach keeps coming out saying, it's down to me and everything. Although we've heard all this rubbish for the last 13 years. And, what it comes down to is a lot of players living off past glories. And I wonder whether or not there's a number of All Blacks who are in the same headspace. You have to earn the right to play for our national team every single time that you play. And I just felt there was an overconfidence, because overconfidence is why you make those stupid mistakes. And just a lack of whatever it is, clarity or messaging, I don't know. I'm not sure whether or not, when you made the question before about Scott Robertson, about his future and so forth, look, I back this coach. If we can find a better coach today, right now, put him in the job.
Yeah.
Put him in the job. I don't believe there's a coach in New Zealand. And people don't say Joe Schmidt to me because he's coaching Australia, right?
Yeah.
There's a better coach right now in our country. Put him in the job. I think Razor deserves to stay in that job. He's got to get this right. But these defeats are stacking up. That's 6 now. That's 19 since the 2019 semi-final loss to England. And part of the problem is that, you'll get people on one hand saying, you're being far too critical. Well, the reason that this team is because it does absorb criticism and it hates losing. The day that we accept, a performance like that, 43-10, the most humiliating loss the All Blacks have had. If we sit back and say, that's okay, don't be harsh on them, the boys are hurting. I mean, just forget all of that.
Well, yeah, the
That's
last 100 plus years is pointless then, isn't it? The standard that's been set for this team for so long is pointless.
That's the case. I think that a lot of these players have got to look really hard and honest at themselves and ask why they're playing and why, is it for Instagram likes? Is it for the cash? Is it for the girls? Is it because they want to, go to Japan and get more money after? I don't know. But ultimately what they should be playing for is to win test matches for New Zealand and representing our country. And if you think going out and playing like that is doing that, well, you shamed the black jersey is what you did.
Yeah, agreed.
And being a New Zealander overseas watching that, I was absolutely embarrassed by it. And I hope that they're embarrassed by it. Having said all of that, they have a great opportunity to redeem themselves in a week's time against Australia. And then again, even if we beat Australia twice this year, even if we go and beat Ireland and then beat England, Scotland and Wales and win all 4 tests on that Grand Slam. So if we win the 6 most major tests that we've still got left this year, it doesn't compensate for that.
No.
What I feel this has done, and I'm drawing the Man United parallel here, because this to me was like Man United losing 5-0 at home to Liverpool. That defeat was a wound in our club which we will never heal. And this is what I feel this defeat is as well. And hopefully what it does is it's a turning point or a stake in the sand, or it's the 57-0 that the Boks got thrashed by us. I think when they lost to us 57-0 in 2017, I think they got pantsed by England by 50 points. I think they lost to Italy as well. These were humiliating losses for them. If it becomes that and we move on from that, well, then something good comes from it. But, if we strut around still and pretend that we are something that we're not, which is the world's best team. We're not the world's best team. I mean, that was quite obvious on the weekend. And we're so far behind that team that thrashed us in Wellington that I think that, to me, this is what I want to see from here, that we actually have to regroup from here and you've still got the support of the country and everything else. That goes without question. But we have to regroup from here, and we actually have to do something within ourselves to reclaim what we've just lost. That's what I feel. And as a Man United fan, we've never recovered from that 5-0 home defeat to Liverpool. We end up losing 7-0
the next season,
two later.
Yeah.
And I believe that those defeats are still lingering at the club, which is why we got dicked on the weekend, which is why we finished 15th last year. And I hope that this isn't the case with the All Blacks, because that showed the rest of the world that, we are soft. We've got a soft underbelly.
Yeah.
And to see players standing around not willing to tackle at the end, and I felt like they gave up as well. Like, that's what hurt the most. As I said, we can all take a defeat. And South Africa were magnificent. But we were in that game up until about the 57th or 58th minute. I thought it was a huge mistake not to kick that penalty as 17-13. And then just watching guys botch lineouts. And, how do you, when you practice and train all week, how can you not have a money move for a line out?
Well, there was that McAllister one that he threw in the second half that it looked like he was the South African guy throwing it to their lock. It was so confusing. And that was, I think they scored straight after.
Yeah. We can pinpoint all of these things. But I don't want to make excuses, because I think if we make excuses, then they make excuses for themselves. These guys are the only guys that can rectify this. They deserve the chance to rectify it, but they have to rectify it.
Yeah.
And if they can't, well, then run off and get a contract in Japan and let somebody else come along who actually has pride in playing for that jersey, who actually wants to win Test. Look, as I said, one of the things that frustrates the hell out of me, and I'm an old git, but, I saw on the All Blacks social media a couple of days later, the rah-rah celebrating the Barretts having 300 collective tests. Great achievement. But 2 days after getting dicked like that isn't time to start all this promotional rubbish and claptrap. It's not. Now's the time to be super humble is what it is. There's nothing to celebrate at the moment. And thinking that, celebrating their collective 300 tests is somehow going to make this better? Come on.
Well, it's like when the players got gifted watches after that Ireland series. You've got to understand, how are your fans feeling right now? They're not feeling great, so don't put things out there that makes it seem like that you guys are great,
Well, that's it. And, when you see stuff like that coming out from the official stores, you think, well, do you care? Do you really care? Or is this a promotional exercise for you? Is it an advertising campaign? Is it? No, it's not. It goes far deeper than that. So, you can tell I'm still disappointed a couple of days later, but I'm not at the slash and burn stage or anything like that, and I think, as I say, the perspective for me to be applied is, how do we move from here? I think that Scott Robertson's got to take a good look at himself in terms of who he's got around him. Are they actually doing what he needs them to do? How good at those jobs, are they? Does he have too many voices going on, for example? I mean, we've got, you've been to training. There's so many people there, so many support staff, so many coaches. Is it just a case of you've just got this massive jigsaw going on and nobody can actually put the pieces together? Ted Henry won a World Cup with Shag and Wayne Smith. Shag won a World Cup with two coaches. Do we really need, a backs coach, a skills coach, a line-out coach? Because, I mean, it's obviously not working. And you can't tell me that it is working when you go back last year and this year, and we've lost 6 test matches. We've lost 2 of the last 3, getting absolutely scolded by Argentina and then by South Africa. So clearly it's not. So, a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And hopefully we see some answers in the Bledisloe Cup. But again, even if we win those 2 matches, it doesn't paper over what went on in Wellington.
No.
So really frustrating.
Yeah. So would you make mass changes? I know we're a week and a half away.
I sound a bit emotional about it. I probably am, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think we all are, and that's a good thing. It means that we care. Would you make mass changes at all to the team to take on the Wallabies in that first Bledisloe? It's a week and a half away, so a lot can change between now and then, but would you make mass changes?
Well, I just, and this is the thing, it's too easy to sit there and say, well, this guy should be there. Look, how many people were clamouring for Leroy Carter to be in the team? And after 5 minutes when he scored a try or whatever it was, everyone's saying, but,
he's probably the only guy that whose stocks sort of went up after that test, to be fair. I thought he actually played all right, Leroy Carter.
Well, I thought he was okay. I didn't think, I thought he was okay, but, it's, put this guy on the team, put that guy on the team, put this guy. I don't know. I don't know whether that is the answer. normally in All Black rugby, what happens is when you have a defeat, you get a chance to rectify the defeat, which happened after Argentina, which is why most of that team played again at Eden Park. So I would suspect that after that defeat, that he'll probably give most of these guys the chance to redeem themselves. But as I said a little bit earlier, that if they don't, well, then start talking to your agent and start getting ready to go overseas and have a great career in Japan. Because what we're looking at is a World Cup in 2 years' time. And that's 5 defeats and 6 to South Africa now. And also the last 2 games we played against them, remember they were down to 14 at Eden Park. They had a 78% possessions or
the last 10 minutes here.
I think
possession it was here.
Last 10 minutes against us. And absolutely smacked us up in the last 20 minutes at Wellington as well. So what is that saying? Is that saying our fitness levels aren't
well, last year we had this issue. We
theirs?
couldn't score points in the last 20 minutes. So maybe it is a fitness thing. Yeah.
And look, I'm not so sure that, at the moment that there is, a huge pool of players outside those that have been selected added to the squad that are any better than these guys.
No.
Is it right to make wholesale changes now? Look, if they did and the newbies performed great. But look, we put, a forward pack together against Argentina in Buenos Aires, which is our biggest, toughest, strongest forward pack. And they just got absolutely wasted.
Up, yeah.
That team we selected to play in Wellington, I think if you ask most of us before the game, we're all sitting there going, yeah, that's a really good team. Look at that bench. That's a strong All Black team. Well, they weren't, were they? There was one moment there which I thought summed it all up. And I don't know who the South African guy was, but he just smashed into Samasoni and just sent him tumbling, 10 yards backwards, knocked the next guy off his feet. That's desire as much as technique and ability is what that is. You want the physicality. You want to own your opponent. You want to be a beast, and we didn't have that. So that's up here as much as it is actually playing ability. So when you question about whether these guys should be playing, I don't doubt that they have the ability. I don't doubt that at all. But whatever went on, no leadership on that field, no ability to change the game plan, a complete breakdown of communication in terms of the most fundamental aspects of the game, and I think a unwillingness to compete in the nasty side of the game, which is attacking the high ball. Well, I just didn't feel like we were committed.
No.
And, some of those contact areas of the game where I feel that's where we fell away, which is really disappointing. Sometimes a smack in the bum is what a sports team needs. But what I fear is what
we've had a lot of them, though.
That does to it. Yeah, well, that's it. We've had way too many of them. And since 2019, we've had 19 losses and 2 draws, which is not acceptable. And whether or not, these guys have got used to the fact that they lose games and the country still loves them and the Instagram followers still love them and they still get all the sponsors, products and everything, and they still get paid. And, we don't want this team to be like other New Zealand sports teams that feel it's okay to lose because, it's not in their DNA to be desperate enough to win every game. And that's what sets the All Blacks apart. So this is a real, I think, levelling moment for this coach and these players. And hopefully they get it right against Australia, and hopefully they get it right twice against Australia. But again, I don't think that winning twice against Australia reclaims what they lost in Wellington on the weekend.
DSPN.